Short answer is fishing and local transport in the fjords up the Norse coast. Imagine you live in a valley between the Norwegian mountains down to one of the fjords cutting through the entire coastline. Your homestead is the only one in this valley, so to go meet and greet your neighbors, you go to the fjord. Here lies your faering ready for you. You and your family man the boat and set out. You and your son man the 2 sets of oars, and you gain speed. When reaching a position where the wind is right, you take in the oars and raise the simple square rig on the single mast to ride the wind while it is right. You use the steering oars to keep the course to the gathering. As you go further, other faring boats join in. These are your neighbors from the other valleys. You can only get together over water due to the mountains separating you. Yours and the other faring boats gather around a cliff shaped like a pulpit, and at the top the preacher raises his arms and starts to hold his sermon to the congregation. This tale could be from the Norse fjords of old, where every homestead had a faering like we would have a car. The faering was the all-important personal means of transportation in the fjords, and given the richness in fish and seafood of the Norse fjords compared to the relative sparseness of agricultural land, the faering was also important as a fishing vessel. Actually, this was its most important function, as it provided a staple addition to the cuisine of Norway and was also a source of the all-important fish exports. And as mentioned in my small imaginative tale, it was also the means by which the isolated families could get together. The description of a sermon being held to the congregation in boats from a cliff is not a fiction. This was done as far south as the Danish island of Bornholm. Here the fishing villages of the north and west coast were situated on a thin strip of land between the sea and high cliffs inland. These fishers would go to sermons in their boats at cliffs like John's Chapel and Sanctuary Cliff. The faring dominated on the Norwegian coast but existed all over Scandinavia. Its name, faering, is a contraction of the word fjæringer, meaning four-oared. A larger version was called seksæringer, having 6 oars instead. The faering is still a common boat to be found along the Norwegian coast and in other parts of Scandinavia. Today a rudder has become common instead of the steering oars, however. The faering traces back to at least the Viking age, but is most likely much older, all the way back to the 400s. It looks like a small version of the drakkar and knarr Viking ships, which is because that is what it is. The Viking longship were merely enlarged, sea-going versions of the common faering. The faering is a combined boat, being propelled both by oars and sail when the wind is right. It has a single mast, which traditionally has a square rig, like it was common for Viking ships. In keeping with the Norse tradition, faerings are and were clinker built, with its planks overlapping to form the hull, giving strength and flexibility in rough weather. The faering would usually be between 12 and 14 foot long. This gave it a good size to be able to carry a number of people from a small family. The traditional faering is identical front and back, meaning you can simply switch your direction. Newer versions can be had with a stern, however. Some faerings were also made with a small covered compartment or room that could be anywhere from 30 to 70 centimeters, giving some cover from the weather. These were called halvrumsfæringer, that is half-room faerings. The faerings spread along with the Norse across the North Atlantic to Iceland and Greenland, where it fished the rich Arctic waters. Today, the Faering is still widely used as a small fishing vessel, albeit for recreational use. Aside from this, races are also held to see who is the best rower. The Faering is thus an excellent example of a small simple design that stands the test of time.